Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. It's quite a week. We got a lot of rock and roll on the brain here. I'm resting up. I've even freshly shaved for Eddie Vedder and the boys. Pearl Jam in, Bruce Springsteen in. You'll hear from members of Styx on the radio this week. You'll also hear from Nils Lofgren from the East Street Band. And you're going to hear some baseball, and you're going to hear a lot of football. JT the Brick's going to join us in advance of the Raiders coming to town this weekend. I had them all set to, give him oysters, feed him crab cakes. And we have to do all that with Luke Jones now. Friday, we're going to be down at Cooper's for the Fells Point Oyster Festival. It's all weekend long. Lots of bands you've heard of, lots of great bands. I'll be there Friday morning kicking it off. We're going to have Dave Shine in there, as well as Chad Wiesling, a little baseball, little football, little Olympics. No bigger Oriole fan than Chad Wiesling. I hope they win a game before Friday. The Maryland Lottery is going to make it all happen. The Gold Rush Sevens doublers have a handful of these left, and then it's going to be all Ravens scratch-offs all season long as we get the Maryland Crab Cake Tour back out on the 20th to Fadley's, the 24th to State Fair with Angela Alsobrooks. The 27th, we're going to be at Costas. We're also going to be celebrating my birthday on October the 11th. I think Luke might be covering there won't be a baseball game that day. For my birthday and your birthday, post-birthday, we're going to celebrate at Pizza John's in Essex. Where else am I going to take you, Luke Jones?
That sounds good. I'm there.
October 11th. Write it down. See, I'm breaking news, almost like our WNST text that I'm in the corner right now, just waiting to see. What I really want to do is wake everybody up at 105.7, make all their pockets go off and 98 Rock and all that stuff. But I'm not going to do that just yet because Bill Cole from Cole Roofing said make the first one a really good one. So that's what I'm going to do. He's going to be joining us here this week as well. Luke, we get together every day and we try to talk about this. And, as we're here today, it's Tuesday morning. I'll be full kayfabe on this. Boy, that's a lousy effort. This baseball team on a night-by-night basis now, when I come up and I see these names I barely recognize and I have to go Google and say, who are these guys? I almost tweeted out. I was too busy eating an oyster over at Riley's Oyster last night having a good time. But I almost tweeted out the reason they look like a different team is because they are.
Yeah, I don't think that's unfair to say that. I think obviously we've focused on the struggles of certain individuals like Adley Rutschman, for example, who was dropped to fifth in the order on Monday, and Cedric Mullins moves up to the second spot. And as I pointed out to you a couple days ago, you look at Cedric Mullins' numbers since late June, he's been pretty good. Now, part of that is he's become a platoon player, and we saw that play out even on Monday where Austin Slater hits for him. With the lefty in the game. So his role has changed, but he's performed at a higher level, and I have no problem with that. As I said to you the other day, Adley Rutschman at this point, and look, he had a couple knocks on Monday. Great. You hope he continues that. We've seen him look like himself for a couple days, and then it just kind of goes away again. But they've got a lineup that is very incomplete right now. And what I mean by that is not just the injuries to Jordan Westberg and Ryan Mountcastle and go down the list of their depth guys, Urias and Mateo, go down the list, but Heston Kjerstad, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him. But what it's forced them to be is miscast in some ways, right? Ryan O'Hearn is playing more than he did prior to the Mountcastle injury and hasn't really performed consistently at the higher level that we've seen him do, where it's more of a straight platoon. And I guess it's not a straight platoon because they've shared DH and first base responsibilities. But point is, role changes. Eloy Jimenez, we've seen him now start more against right-handed pitching. That wasn't really the ideal. That wasn't the idea when Mike Elias acquired him. So you see that. And you just go down the list, and that was my first reaction on Monday afternoon when the lineup is sent out. You just look at the lineup, and it's not very impressive, right? Not as impressive as it looked back in May, and part of that is because guys are struggling, but just the names, right? You see
Westberg's
Soto.
a different name than he was 2 years ago. Rutschman's a different name than it was 2 years ago, right? Sure. Santander, based on the kind of year he's had, that looks a little different in the lineup in September than maybe even it did in April to me.
Well, he got off to a slow start. I don't know if
we're used to seeing Hayes. We're used to seeing Mountcastle. We're used to seeing these names that just are unavailable. Just like we're used to seeing Grayson Rodriguez in the start. We were used to seeing Bradish, and they're gone. They're gone, and they're not coming back. Some of them are. Well, Grayson might be coming back. We'll see.
Right. So, but even with Monday's game in the top of the first inning, it starts in encouraging fashion. I mean, Gunnar leads off with a double. Mullins lined out but hit the ball hard. Santander with an RBI single. O'Hearn walks. Adley Rutschman singles. So you've got the bases loaded, one out. You've already put a run across the board, and good at bats, right? It started well, and then Jimenez and Colton Cowser strike out. You strand three, and you just feel like, okay, here we go again. And they left a ton of men on base. They didn't do much of anything offensively other than Santander hitting his 40th home run. He drove in all three Orioles runs. And then on the pitching side, I mean, Cade Povich just wasn't good enough. The bullpen was terrible behind him. So it heads up to a lopsided blowout loss. And, the only other thing really worth mentioning is Cedric Mullins making the outstanding catch in center field, but then Cade Povich, in a matter of pitches, gives up 3 more runs after that. So, or what, the 2-run homers. So it frustrating night. I wish I could say it was a surprising night, but this is how it's been going, offensively especially. And then the pitching, they, as I've said to you, if you look at their pitching over the last month, it's probably been better than some would have anticipated. And I'm not saying that, the bar's not extremely high, but
the bullpen's been highly decent on a statistical basis over the last 6 weeks, right?
Right. But obviously in a game like that where you're trailing, I mean, you're not eager to use your best
gave
guys.
up more runs, right? Like, so,
oh, sure. Well, Birch Smith gave up runs. I mean, Cole Irvin ends up giving up 2 home runs late. Just
when the season began, we didn't believe Cole Irvin was a major leaguer or was borderline. We certainly didn't believe Birch Smith was a part of this. We believed Kimbrel was going to the hall of, relief pitching, that he was going to at least be effective and a guy we could use. And, as September turns to October and the leaves change here, I got something for you because, I mean, after a 10-3 game, you're not inspired. By the way, nice job by John Harbaugh to answer your questions on Monday, too. I appreciate that, by the way. You want to give anything on Lamar? Do you think Lamar's hurt or do you not?
I don't, whatever it is, I don't think is overly serious. I mean, the one tell that you could actually take away, because this is what the job is.
I'm not there watching the whites in John's eyes.
No,
anymore. He's I'm not enough.
No, that wasn't the tell I'm talking about.
The ultimate lie is you're in and I'm out. That's the lie. So go ahead.
The ultimate thing, and this is what the job has become more and more, not specifically to the Ravens, but just sports media in general because of athletes on social media. But the Ravens put out something on Twitter about it being team photo day, and Lamar was in the video.
He was goofing. Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. I mean, so whatever. And look, I'm not shocked if he's a little sore, right? I mean, we talked about.
Well, why can't Harbaugh just say we gave him the day off? He ran the ball 15 times. He's got to play Sundays.
Because coaches tighten up after they lose a football game, and because for some reason
Lamar's fine. He just gave him the day off. That's fine. So if Lamar's not fine, then dude.
I mean, I don't know.
This is part of the game. I'm not willing to play with Chad Steele or these people anymore. That you spend the whole day to go out there and they sit there and they look at you like. They smile F you. That was an old Daniel Snyder reference that I really, Bishotti has smile F to me many times. Like, I don't get it. I'm a fan and I'm tuning in at 3:00. Maybe they just need clicks. Is that what you need, Michelle? Clicks? Like, what is that? What is that? He's the biggest star in the sport. It's a Monday. He's not out there. If it's not a big deal, you say it's not a big deal. Now, if he's not out there and you play coy with me, I feel like he might be. I feel like he might. Yeah. It might have been injury. So
maybe, and we'll find out starting on Wednesday. But yeah, it does come across as silly to me if he is totally fine. If it is just a matter of him being a little sore and say, look, it's Monday, you're fine. You're going to be in meetings. You'll be out there Wednesday. Even if we give you Wednesday, you'll be out there Thursday and Friday. It's fine. Then why not just say that? The Las Vegas Raiders are not altering their prep to say, oh my gosh, we better start preparing for Josh Johnson. So when I hear people say, well, they have nothing to gain by doing that. Well, yeah, they actually do, because you have a frustrated fan base who is disappointed being 0-1, and now they're going to fret. And look, I'm not saying people should worry about Lamar Jackson at this point. I'm not terribly concerned about it at this point. Now, if he's not out there Wednesday, then I start to wonder. And then if he's not out there Thursday, I really start to wonder. But for now, this early in the week, I'm going to choose to chill because we saw the video where he's goofing around and
All
did not know.
John had to say is Lamar is fine. That's all he
Right.
had to say.
Right.
And instead, he's going to try to mind F Marvin out in Vegas that
Yeah.
maybe Lamar's not. Marvin slept last night. Marvin's fine. So,
No,
so
Marvin
Spears.
didn't. No, I'll disagree with that. Marvin didn't sleep, but it's not because he thinks Lamar Jackson might not play. It's
Right.
because Lamar Jackson is going to play, right?
It's
So
not affecting
yeah.
how
Right,
anybody's putting
exactly.
a game plan together this week. So I just.
It's silly. It's silly.
It's
I mean,
John. It's John being John. And when people ask me about John, I say that's the real John. That's the real John. Stand there with his $100 million and smile at you and wave at you and pretend he's never seen you and pretend he's dumb. That was his dad's gig and his brother's gig. I playing dumb. That his brother's great at that. And I'm like, everybody gathered. The fans are tuned in. Treat your customers with a little more respect all the way around. But that really begins with paranoia and Chad Steele. I've been writing about that. I want to talk baseball with you. So this is where we got all week to do that. And Pearl Jam's coming to town. I've already seen Bruce. I'm seeing Sticks. Nothing's going to put me in a bad mood this week. Nothing. Not even if the Orioles get swept at Fenway Park. So Connor Norby and Jackson Holliday, I want to ask you this because I always think about our ride in Sarasota when I did hot yoga that night and it rained and you got rained out and I picked you. And I remember we had a really great conversation that night. We went to watch March Madness. We were talking baseball, and clearly the team won 101 games last year. Clearly we were 4 days away from opening day and thought they could be good. We were worried about Bradish. I'm trying to think of the issues then. The issues in April 1st were a lot different than the issues now.
Yeah.
And no question about it. But at the end of it, if we're going to do a requiem on this and they take a facer as Barry Bloom predicted this week. By the way, Barry Bloom came on. He said, I want the Yankees to finish second. They need to play all week. They can't take 4 days off. So there's an 80-year-old guy who's watched baseball his whole life with this crazy taking days off. He's like, no. You guys win the division. We don't want to play. Well, we don't want to sit around. So nonetheless, Connor Norby, I'm watching what he's doing and listen, this isn't about Ortiz in Milwaukee or even about deals. I mean, I saw Rick Dempsey the other day. I can go back and revisit the Rick Dempsey Tippy Martinez deal for you too from the 70s. But in this particular case for this year, for trying to win the World Series this year, which is the goal. It's been the goal the whole time. It was the goal when they had a 6-game lead in the division, the whole deal. The notion that Connor Norby may have been a better second base option this year than Jackson Holliday, given the age, given they all, and look, I don't give Lock and Ford to him. I used to know Jason. I don't know him anymore ever since he told me to go F myself on a text years ago about John Angelos, and now he's got the kayfabe. He's got the Stephen A. Smith character that he plays out on Twitter, which I don't think Jason's lost his mind. I hope he hasn't. I love you, but the notion that they overrate their own prospects and that this was something back in the 90s when I was a beat reporter, when I was a real media member, where I would hang out with the Sid Thrifts and the Frank Wrens and the people that evaluated these players, and they would come to media members, Mark Maskey at the Post, Dave Sheinin, who's going to join me on Friday, who's the beat writer, Ken Rosenthal, all those guys, pick any of the Boswell, and say, this Luis Matos, he's going to be a great player. And, the whole deal was to try to package him on July 31st for David Wells or whatever they were going to do, right? So they're always puff. But it's different when Baseball America puffs these guys. And when the industry puffs these guys, and when the industry puts on, you're the son of Matt Holliday, you can be a big leaguer at 18, 17, better than Robin Yount. You're the chosen one. You're Johnny Bravo. And then the kid comes up, he looks like a little leaguer. He's hitting one something, and they give him a couple of innings off on Monday night at Fenway Park. I just think we have shined up all of these prospects, and we've been so bad for so long, and the fans want it so bad, and the fans want every top 10 draft pick to go to the Hall of Fame, and they think we want every top 10 Raven draft pick to be John Ogden or Ed Reed, and he wasn't a top 10, but you know what I'm saying, right? That one thing. I remember back when there was no expectation on Mark Smith. There was some expectation on Jeffrey Hammonds, but I mean, on some players back in the era that just went away. You didn't hear of them again. Or they got drafted as an outfielder, became a pitcher, became an outfielder like Adam Lowen. I mean, just guys' careers that went on. But for winning this year and evaluating their own talent as to where it is, where it might be, where Mullins and Hayes and Santander and Mountcastle and O'Hearn, where on their journey, those are the older guys, right? And then there's the babies, all the babies from Gunnar and Adley down. And Gunnar and Adley were on the team. They were fine. Westberg, they sort of brought him up middle last year, and maybe he makes it, maybe he doesn't. Next thing you know, he's in the All-Star game. So he's a is, but they're not all going to be ises. I mean, I remember when there was Coggins and Bunbury, and Coggins didn't really make it. He was my dad's favorite. And he might have been the best player that year. Al Bunbury might be over. Robbie's telling you that in 73. So I think about young players, and I'm bringing up something that was 10 years before you were born, but this is my baseball pedigree to say all of these years, every Ken Gerhardt, I mean, the 89 Orioles, Worthington, Gerhardt, none of those guys really made it. They made it for a minute and a half and they went away. And I don't know about Kalzer. I don't know about.
Kalzer's going to be Rookie of the Year, man.
I got it. Okay.
I mean, he's a good player. I'm not saying he's a perfect player. He's a good player.
I think we expect them all to be perfect players. I think that's it. And I think we expected Jackson Holliday to be perfect at 19, and they went dealing away. And I look at Norby, and I think they might have had a better second base might have been better if they didn't make that deal to hold on to some level of depth because they didn't know Westberg was going down. All of that, but ifs and buts and candies and nuts. I'm just saying, this isn't their best foot in September for where they were in April. And I'll leave it to you, and you can take the floor at this point. But I am a little concerned of the rushing of players in the middle of a pennant race. And I don't think Jackson Holliday's going to the Hall of Fame, ask anybody. But I don't know that he's going to hit more than a $111 in the playoffs next month. And that I'm not seeing that growth from him that maybe we saw from a well, I mean, Henderson was 20 or 21, so I don't know. Maybe next year's Jackson's year.
I mean, okay. So you're saying you would have rather kept Connor Norby? I
think he was in line to be in the big leagues before Jackson Holliday, and I think that's bearing itself out over 90 days. That this year, this team, and we're talking about Cole Irvin pitching and Bert Smith pitching, and we're like the best second baseman we had available in the organization, they gave away at the trading deadline because they got antsy and felt like they didn't need him. And they're going to need somebody to play second base this month. And I just don't think Jackson Holliday – I've not seen anything about Jackson Holliday that says like that this was a great idea to rush him to the – not to mention starting a service clock, which they're going to have to pay him when he turns out to be Joe Morgan, which I think he will be. But I just think they're trying to win games now, and they're scuffling. And I feel like – they're bringing all these quad A guys. I mean, there's just a lot of quad A going on right now, bro. I mean, come on, seriously. There's a lot of guys they'd rather have not played with that were not the first or second or third options to be doing what they're doing at any given point coming in the game in the seventh inning in the bullpen or even in the starting lineup last night in batting ninth.
Because they've got a multitude of injuries. I mean, I don't know. Look, Connor Norby's off to a great start with the Marlins. He's playing for the freaking Marlins, though. Is he doing what he's doing with them? Can you tell me he's doing with the Orioles right now in the midst of a pennant race where there's way more scrutiny, way more attention, way more urgency to that? I have no idea. My issue with trading Connor Norby is that they got Trevor Rogers, who's at AAA, right? There's an opportunity cost there that I have a way bigger issue with than trading Connor Norby. And look, I mean, your point about bringing up prospects of the past. I mean, Jackson Holliday is a consensus number 1 prospect in baseball. This isn't
that didn't mean that he needed to come up in June, though. I guess that was my point. In the old days when Angelos was pinching pennies, there would have been a longer meeting. Mike Flanagan wouldn't have been allowed to bring him up.
But this isn't Jeff Fiorentino coming up from single A. Like he was at AAA and putting up numbers at AAA. I mean, clearly in hindsight, he wasn't ready back in April, right? But at the same time, he had put up numbers at the end of 2023 at AAA to say maybe he is. And he had a good spring training to say maybe he is. And then they found out he wasn't. So he went back, and they didn't bring him back until July 31st. They didn't bring him back in July. They brought him back in August. I mean, let's look at it.
I'm not even trying to be argumentative. I'm just trying to say what is best 9 right now and what would best 9 have been.
My point is, to me, what Connor Norby is doing with the Marlins compared to what Jackson Holliday is doing in a pennant race is apples to oranges. And again, we're still dealing with small sample sizes for both players. I would disagree that I haven't seen anything from Jackson Holliday. Jackson Holliday went on a tear as soon as he came back up. Now, I also keep in mind he's got that 2 for whatever it was from April that has sunk his overall batting average.
But I bet his split's 210, 215
No, I'm not
since
saying
he's been
no,
up, right?
I'm not saying
Is
it's
it
been great.
What is it? Is it sub 200? It might be. I don't know.
I don't have it in front of me. You can look it up if you want. I'm
Sure.
trying not to mess up my internet connection at the moment, as you know, that little inside baseball there. But yeah, I mean, he's been up and down. He's been up and down. He's 20. And part of this is also
I'm worried about winning a World Series with that. That's
okay,
all I'm
but
saying.
Nestor, Ryan Mountcastle's out. Jordan Westberg's out. Their depth, Ramon Arias is out. Like who? So okay, Connor Norby, fine. But what about the other 3 spots in the lineup that have been concerns,
I hope you're
right?
laughing at me. And Jackson Holliday has 3 home runs in 5 games in the ALDS and becomes, you know, and it just changes because he certainly could. But I'm looking at it now and saying I don't like the lineup. To your point, I'm looking at it saying I know why they're getting beat to some degree, including bad at bats and swing throughs and all home run and you not working like all of the things that go into this, but they don't have as good of a team as they had. And I don't know. I accept that. You accept that. We're baseball wizards, right? But I don't know that everybody else is going to accept that when it doesn't happen for them. Because
I think most people are getting to the point where they look, they've been mediocre for 2.5 months now. They've been a 500 team for 2.5 months now.
And this is a lot less fun. I want to point that out.
Oh, sure. No, quite. No, it's funny you said that because I texted with a couple of my friends during the game on Monday night, and I was just saying, man, remember when watching the Orioles is really fun? And look, let's also
I got 5 more of these before Sunday.
Let's also be measured. Let's be measured about this. It's even where they are right now over the last 2 months. Sure as heck still beats where they were 5 years ago, they were for the better part of the last 30 years or 40 years.
I'm not pissing on prosperity, dude. That's not who I am.
And I know you're not. But I do think
I'm just trying to figure out how they're winning the World Series with what they have right now. Well, and you'll say to me they're not going to have to because somebody's going to come back. They're going to be better than this 3 weeks from now, or at least put a better team on the field.
They need to be, or it will be a very, very quick, very abrupt, very brief appearance in the AL postseason. I mean, they're going to be in it, right? I mean, they're 9 up or with 18 to go or whatever it is in terms of what that last wild card spot would be. So mathematically, they'd have to completely crash and burn, and that one of those teams that's on the outside looking in right now would have to go nuts. So they're going to be in, but there's the question of what's it going to look like at that point in time. And, Danny Coulomb starting a rehab assignment this week. Jacob Webb's continuing and should be close to being ready to return. What does that mean for Craig Kimbrell? I mean, again, we're at the point now where the money isn't a factor anymore because you're only talking about a couple weeks worth of salary, right? Even at what he's being paid, I don't think that's remotely a consideration based on how they operated at the trade deadline. So I think for the longest time, for the last month or so, the idea was to try to get him to a place where he was able to get himself back in order back in May, for example, and was really good for the next 7 weeks or whatever it was. But we're at the point now where, I mean, how many outings is he going to have to string together where he looks so good there that you have any level of trust of even thinking about wanting to use him in the postseason? So that's where I look at this and say, but that said, I mean,
they brought him into a game they were already going to lose and they lost it.
No, not that. But I mean, Bert Smith isn't pitching well. I mean, Cole Irvin gave up 2 home, right? So, I mean, it's not like they don't have pieces in the bullpen right now where you would say, oh yeah, I'll trade that guy out for Danny Coulomb coming back. Oh yeah, I'll trade that guy out for Jacob Webb coming back. So,
or you could say he can't be any worse than that guy.
But to bring it back to what you were talking about, with Jackson Holliday specifically, I mean, look, I mean, he's been up and down. He's had some stretches where he's looked really good. Jackson, of all their concerns, and I'm not implying that you were saying that he was your biggest concern either, to be clear, but of all their concerns, him playing is so far down on the list right now for me. I do think his defense at second base has gotten better. It still needs to continue to get better. I think if there was one really big miscue as it pertains to Jackson Holiday beyond what ended up happening in April. And again, guys like me were ready to say, hey, bring the kid north and see how it looks. And he wasn't ready, and no one really knew that. So that I can't completely crush them for that because there is unknown. That jump from AAA to the majors is arguably bigger than ever because of the shortage of pitching, and any AAA pitching worth its salt isn't in AAA very long anymore. So you have that. But I think if there's something that I would call them out and take them to task for a little bit as it pertains to Jackson Holiday, it'd probably be on the defensive side in saying from about June on last year, or certainly by July, it was evident that Gunnar Henderson was becoming their primary shortstop. One, because he showed he could handle it. Now, I know he's had more errors this year, and certainly that's something, that needs to be cleaned up. No question about that. But in a big picture sense, he had shown that he could play that position, and Jorge Mateo had hit himself out of the starting lineup, right? So from that point on, they should have identified Jackson Holiday, who was on the, had the rocket attached to his back in terms of his ascension through the minors. They should have said, this kid needs to be playing second base every day. And they didn't really do that. So he missed a lot of reps last year at second base that I think would have made him better now. I do think he's showing growth there, but it's still not where it needs to be and where you'd want it to be. But that's part of the process of a young player. So
see, I thought Holiday would wind up playing third and Westberg would wind up playing second, but that's not going to happen, right?
No. I think
that's what I would have told you a year and a half ago. That's what I was saying.
Okay. And I'm not saying I would have said you were wrong on that. I would have wondered, what's funny to me, and it's kind of been lost in the conversation because he hasn't been out there, but Westberg, for me, last year, I thought he looked better at second base, and at third base, it was okay, but not great.
Well, whereas I said that last year.
I thought it was the opposite this year, where I thought Westberg played much better at third base, and at second base, it wasn't bad, but I thought that position was more average, whereas I thought he was slightly, at least slightly above average at third base this year. But
you and I played enough baseball as kids that when you move from the left to the right or back and forth, it's a huge deal when you're a kid where angles and where the pitcher is, and then you do it all day professionally and you move. It's a big deal, but like in the history of the game, I mean, I don't need to tell you how many Bobby Gritches were going to go be shortstops and turned into second baseman and vice versa and all over the place. It is interesting about how an organization would place players in that way. Machado was a guy, Ripken. I mean, they were all, Alex Rodriguez, was he too big to play short? There was all that too big to play shortstop. My name's Aparicio. So shortstops were always under 6 feet tall, right? So that went on forever. But where you place these guys, it really is organizationally, because in any other organization, they could all be playing a different position for sure. This is everybody getting their head hit here, all at the same place at the same time. They're all 20 young, and they're on this team that we thought was a rocket ship till all the arms fell off,
Sure. And look, even with their offense having struggled over the last month to the degree it has, if their pitching were in a better place, we wouldn't be talking about the offense nearly as much. I think, and look, I've beaten up on the offense here recently because it's been that bad. I've defended the offense when people say the offense has been bad since June, which just statistically, there's not enough to support that. There just isn't. Again, you have to look around.
It feels like it's been bad since June. It's been bad since July.
Right. In August, it was not good. It was bottom third of the league, kind of bad in August. Even in July, it wasn't as bad as maybe it felt just because they didn't have a good July. But again, we also have to remind ourselves, even the best offenses aren't going to score 7 runs every night. It's baseball, right? So you need to have that mix. And collectively, since June, when the pitcher arms really fell off, that's when it really started to mount in terms of just the inconsistency, right? And just this team being 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. Right. They just recently won 3 in a row for the first time since right around the All-Star break. And then less than a week later, they lose 3 in a row for the first time since late July. So, it's what we're seeing. And it feels pretty dire now. Dire might not be the right word, but it definitely feels not so encouraging right now. But as we've said, they're a week or 2 away from a good spell and a couple guys coming off the IL from feeling better about it. I'm still not dismissing their chances because, again, tell me what team in the AL that you love because I'll tell you to wait 10 days and probably you'll see that they're not playing at that same level because that's just what we're seeing. I mean, there are no 100-win teams in the AL. So someone's going to have to come out of it. I'm not saying that the Orioles would be my strongest confidence level right now because of where the pitching is, because of the injuries that they've had. But, it's still September 10th. They don't start the postseason for, 3 more. We got 3 weeks, right? Roughly. So let's see what it looks like in terms of how they're performing then, where they are health-wise, where Jackson Holiday is, where, and again, we do that whole thing. I mean, he's hit, I just pulled it up. He's hit slightly over 200. He has hit for some power. But yeah, he's been up and down. But in an ideal world where guys were healthy, he's their number 9 hitter. I mean, he's still their number 9 hitter sometimes. But problem is the way that the state of their current lineup, you've been asking them to hit 6th or 7th sometimes.
It just feels like Machado was more prepared in 14 or 12, whatever year that was, than he is at this point to be productive at this level and to be a plus player, not a minus player. Who you're waiting on. That's all.
And
I mean a minus player, like I think he's going to hit 200. That's a friggin' minus. That's not a guy I need on my team at 19. You know what I mean? Like that's just not. And that.
Okay, but what are you doing then at triple? Like, this is part of my point, though, Nestor. What purpose does him being at AAA then serve? At some point, you got to let these guys sink or swim,
right?
Okay,
I got you.
And look, he made adjustments in May, June, and most of July. So, it's a tough jump. It is, and I'm not saying that to be that it's great that he's hitting 200, but it's a tough jump. And again, I'll say Connor Norby doing what he's doing with the Marlins, awesome, good for Connor Norby. I like him. I still have some long-term questions about what kind of player he's going to be at the major league level, but he's performed at the same time. He's performing with no pressure in terms of his team trying to win.
Look, there's no question Connor Norby is Rich Dower and Jackson Holiday is Robbie Alomar, right? Like, so, like,
I mean, we don't know
I
that.
Get that.
Maybe.
Well, that's the perception of it.
Sure,
that's the perception of it at this point. And I would say my perception of it right now is I'd rather have the guy that get hit 250 or 260 right now than if I'm trying to win the World Series right now. And that was just my point. Well, and I think we'll look at this and we'll have plenty of time. You and I'll be talking about this for years.
But we also have to remember that move was made before Jordan Westburg had his hand broken. So,
well, you go from deep depth to who's playing second base? Yeah, that's what we go to. Right?
But I would also say if they had traded Connor Norby for a starting pitcher who was pitching well enough to be in their rotation right now, even if he didn't have 2 years of club control like Trevor Rogers has.
They got a Dean Kramer, if you were saying, right?
If they had gotten another bullpen arm, which I think in hindsight, I would have taken Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers and tried to go get another impact reliever rather than what they ended up getting, which Dominguez has been good, Gregory Soto not so good. Again, there's always an opportunity cost. It wasn't so much don't trade him. It was, could you have made a different deal? And I'm sure they could have, right?
I think the feeling was they didn't need him. And you and I spent April and May and June.
Long term, they don't need him, right?
Right. And they didn't need Ortiz either.
And they were in better position still when Ramon Arias was picking up the slack. Then you lose Westburg and Arias, who had been their best hitter.
And Mateo.
Right. Well, but I'm talking offensive. But Mateo would have been in the mix. Sure.
I'm talking middle infield gloves that can give a guy a day off. Play.
Yeah, exactly. So again, at some point in time, it's kind of like talking about the Ravens secondary back in 2021 or 2015, right? Where, okay, I get it. They should have had more depth right off the bat, and I agree with that. But at the same time, once you lose Jimmy Smith and Ladarius Webb and, go down I'm just throwing names out there. At some point in time, it's like, yeah, that guy that's out there that you don't recognize his name, chances are the Ravens didn't want to play him either, but there's a salary cap and you only have so many guys that you can call up from the practice squad that are going to have any level of competence. So look, I get it. And, you bringing it up, that's not an unfair thing to bring up, but at the same time, Jordan Westburg literally, 2 days after the trade deadline, has his hand fractured, and then Ramon Arias, who was so good for him, gets hurt. And then, yeah, you're talking about Emmanuel Rivera and guys that,
Yeah, you're falling down the mountain, as they say.
yeah, I
Yes,
mean,
yeah.
guys you don't even recognize. So, I mean, it's,
All right, they're
it's
going to play more
unfortunate.
baseball at Fenway Park this week. Luke's going to be monitoring it. Luke's going to get some rest. Luke's going to be out in Owings Mills so John can cross his eyes. And I'll tell you on Wednesday, come on back out, y'all. Get some popcorn like we're not watching the game. So Raiders in town this weekend. Orioles out of town. Eddie Vedder in town, Pearl Jam, Bruce Springsteen, and the E Street Band. Styx is in town. Lots of stuff out there. Mark Viviano was very gracious in a lot of time last week with Versig. So you're going to hear a bunch of stuff on the radio this week. It's going to be great. He's Luke. I'm Nestor. We're WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore. Positive.